Stop. Don't go anywhere too fast. It's time to listen to a Head Over the Footy podcast.
Charlie, beautiful intro to the show, mate. Thanks for playing that one for us.
No worries.
Those intros and all the grabs you do a fantastic job.
Thanks. I'm expecting royalty soon.
Yeah, mate, you'll get cash in hand, and there's no doubt about it.
Nice.
Well, we'll welcome you boys. Samuel, Gill, welcome to the show, mate. How you going?
Thanks to be back. I think I've weaseled myself into the regular rotation here.
Yeah. Tell you what, you're sounding a little bit flat today, aren't you, mate? But not used to the Bombers losing.
Yeah. I had an exam, so I didn't actually even watch it, but I listened to it on radio.
During the exam?
No. I had one at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, so I did watch the last 5 minutes, and I saw that. That was a ridiculous decision. Like because I looked online and I heard that there was some controversy regarding the decisions, but the one I saw was the deliberate to Nick Hind, where we were. There was 2 minutes left.
Mate, disgraceful decision.
There was 2 minutes left, and he's on the half-back flank, and he kicks it along the ground to obviously try and keep it in. Yeah, and it dribbles out, and then it's called deliberate. And it's like, if that happened in the forward line, they'd never call deliberate, but it was the same thing. Yeah.
And if you're trying to win the game, I think they're down by 2 goals, and you're kicking a ball off the ground, kicking it towards your goal, why would you want to kick the ball out of bounds?
Yeah.
When you're trying to win the game, you're 2 goals down. You haven't got much control over the ball when you're about to kick it, because it's a loose ball on the ground. You're kicking it off the ground.
Yeah.
Nick Hind didn't have much control. Why would he want to kick it out of bounds out of bounds? That was a horrendous decision. I thought, I don't want to harp on every week. I feel like I harp on about the umpires, but it was just a poor decision. And that 50 metre, a few minutes later, with about a minute left, and the player didn't pass the ball back to the right Gold Coast player, and it got paid a 50. Another stinker. And I don't want to explode and go crazy about it, but if I hadn't gone crazy to this point in the season about umpiring decisions, I'd be going crazy right now about it.
That was annoying. I felt like the game was over then. Can I tell a very, very funny side story that has nothing to do with football regarding that decision?
Well, you can. We'll just introduce you, Charlie. Welcome, mate.
Thanks. It's good to be here. Go on.
Okay, so
here we go.
One of my best mates, David, is currently overseas in Vietnam with his girlfriend, and he had proposed to her and then sent it into the group chat with a little voice memo and like a photo of them with the ring or whatever.
I didn't know that.
And it just happened on the weekend.
Your mate David.
Yeah. And then another one of my best mates was watching the footy, and I don't know if it was that decision, but he just writes into the group chat directly below that, "Fuck that bullshit." So I read it as if he was like, "Fuck you for getting engaged." I was like, so I read that and I just cracked up, and it took me a while because I was like in the middle of exam preparation to realise that he was talking about fucking Nick Hind or Ben McKay getting some dodgy free as opposed to one of our best mates getting married.
So what was the response from the person that just proposed?
I think he understood after a while, but I think there might have been some messages between them, but that's how I read it. Yeah,
that's a good story.
And it just cracked me up. Yeah.
Jesus, that guy would have been regretful about the message he sent in. Okay.
Speaking of the Suns, can I share the gift I've got for the Head Over the Footy Studios?
Mate, you can. You brought in a special prop today.
So I was walking along. What's that street? The one that crosses?
Bridge Road?
Yeah, walking down Bridge Road. No, not Bridge Road. The one that is going...
Church Street.
Yeah, Church Street. Walking down Church Street, and there was a...
the clearance one.
Just before Richmond Traders, there was a little, I don't know, sort of little bookshop. And I spotted this, and I knew I had to have it. So it's a framed holographic image of the original Suns.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Gary Ablett and Swallow, and I don't know who else.
We don't know the other players.
Is Nathan Bock there?
Yeah, we got
Nathan Bock.
We got Michael Riscatelli.
Oh yeah, classic.
David Swallow, Gary Ablett, Nathan Bock, Trent McKenzie.
Oh yeah, the
Cannon.
He
the
plays
cannon.
for Port, doesn't he?
Yeah,
now?
he did.
He's
I
one
think
of
he's
those
probably
weird
been
guys
delisted.
that-
I don't know actually.
Were really famous when they were like 19, and then now they're still plodding around, but no one
Yeah,
thinks about him.
he did have a cannon.
And then the guy on the far right, Zach Smith. I can tell by the signature.
Oh yeah, Zach Smith. He was
Part
one
of-
of the marquee sons.
Part
That's
of the
beautiful.
Part of the,
Yeah.
the infamous God Squad.
Oh
at the
yeah,
Suns.
true. Yeah,
There was that's a hypothesis for why they turned out so shit in the early days, was that they had the God Squad led by Gary Ablett and then the Grog Squad
the Grog
Who was that
squad.
led
led
by?
by Carmichael Hunt.
Oh, okay. Well, of course, yeah.
Okay, so that
I was spending
explains.
too much time praying, but yeah, I mean, I've never seen a framed holographic image before, which was one reason why I needed it, but also just the original Suns. It seems like a collector's item, and I'm not willing to give it up, but I'm putting it on loan to the head of the Footy Studios, so
Just online.
we'll just put it here.
Mate, we'll knock it up there, and that's a
Look how good Gary looks.
he looks.
I reckon he looks better in the Suns. I remember him in the Suns Guernsey over a Geelong Guernsey.
That was a success. Him going to the Suns.
Mm.
It's hard to sort of justify it because at the time, a lot of people changed to following
How
the
many-
Suns because of Gary Ablett.
How many prelims did they lose? Geelong lose in the
So
years.
you're asking about Gold Coast.
No, in
They
the
haven't made
years
a
that
prelim
Gary
yet.
Ablett left, they lost a lot of prelims between 20, and they won the grand final. Obviously,
I'm not saying it was good for Geelong losing
right.
him. I'm saying it was good for Gold Coast. Yeah.
Oh, it was good. Yeah, that would have been.
But the fact he came
screwed
back to
without
Geelong is just disrespectful to Gold Coast. Makes it seem like it was just a little dalliance that meant nothing to him.
Are there any
Yeah,
other?
but no,
To put it in romantic terms.
No, I think he still gave him such big favours.
Are there any other players
And
that are
he-
going to come back? Do you reckon? Can
Uh,
you see any?
You mean from Gold Coast?
No, players that have moved that you think might go back.
Oh, like
Jack
I mean,
Gunston?
who's done it? Gary Abbott's done it.
I'm not talking about who's done it. Who do you think?
Yeah,
might
I know,
do
but
it?
I'm just thinking about the sorts of players that have done it. They've all been pretty good,
No, mate,
and they've
we're
all
not
had
talking about
connection
that,
to
mate.
their former club. So Gary Ablett, Eddie Betts.
I reckon.
Um,
I reckon Danaher could. I reckon
Yeah.
in a couple of years, if Essendon get Danaher on the cheap, it could be an option.
Yeah, that's possible.
I think Collingwood should get back Taylor Adams.
Well, he could do a Gunston, yeah. 1 year.
No, I've got some intel on Taylor Adams leaving Collingwood.
What is it?
Okay.
Yeah.
You better spill it.
Not completely the best feelings. As you know, he's come out on record saying that he was, wasn't completely satisfied with everything.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Collingwood's supposed to have this great culture, but they've got Grundy who left under bad circumstances. They've got Adam Treloar who was left under bad circumstances.
Well,
and
look,
now
you
Taylor Adams
call
as well.
him. Who was Adam Treloar? Yeah. Well, that was different. Adam Treloar was in sort of under a different coach and not under Craig McRae and the sort of values that he instills. So Adam Treloar and Jack Stevenson and all that, they're sort of different. But Grundy leaving, well, Grundy was sort of in that time as well. But Taylor Adams leaving, it's part of football. When you got a good team in front of you, you get pushed out of the team because there's so many good players, and there's good players that are always missing out when you have these premiership teams.
So he can't break into Sydney's midfield, is that right? Or is he playing?
He's been playing in and
Oh,
out.
okay.
They've had injuries. Sydney, he's been playing. He's a good player.
Pretty sad for him.
Yeah. Well, boys, let's crack into it, right? We got a number of things to talk about, and the top story for this week is: should Dustin Martin have to do media for his 300th game? Now, Richmond are playing Adelaide this week, and he won't be playing this game because he's ill. Apparently, that's come out in the news.
Which seems like...
Bit interesting.
Well, I mean,
But to be fair,
is he really sick?
the game's on Thursday night.
It's very
if he's
convenient.
sick today. Anyway, it's good news anyway because I think it'd be a much better game in front of his home fans to play it in Melbourne. So Richmond will be playing Hawthorn the following round, and that'll be Dusty's 300th if he plays it.
Well, it's an interesting question because I do love to observe Richmond fans because I find them quite amusing. And they all say, from what I can tell on the internet, that, Dusty doesn't owe anyone anything. He's just a quiet, achiever. And if he doesn't want to do any interviews, then everyone can get stuffed. But the fact that they're potentially, and again, this is just speculation, but really leaning into his sickness so that he can play on the MCG to have a big blockbuster 300th. That's at the G in front of the home fans and more of an event than at Adelaide. If they're doing that, which, it sort of seems like they are, then they obviously do like the attention and they do like the idea of building it up into an event. And if that's the case, then Dusty, I reckon, he should give an interview.
With Dusty, I think that purely like observing him from the outside, it seems like his attitude isn't based purely on like fuck the media. It's sort of part of his personality. He's quite shy, and doesn't really like it. I just hope that continues. Like, I think that's the case, that when he retires, he's going to go off into the sunshine and he's sort of going to be a bit like Tony Lockett, who you never see in media or anything like that. I hope he doesn't do a Dane Swan, though, who his whole career was about fuck the media. And then a year later realises, fuck, I don't have this $1 million coming in from footy, so I'm going to have to flog some shitty betting ads and do like some really terrible comedy. Like, it was like, it kind of smacked of desperation that after he retired, he then was like, oh, I need the media now.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's a different personality to Dusty.
I don't think Dusty is like that. I think he's going to go off and do whatever. But
yeah, but I don't necessarily disagree with it, but it still needs to be justified to me why he shouldn't do media just because it's its personality. Like, the game's given him a lot. The fans have given him a lot. And you could say he's given the fans a lot, which he has, and maybe he doesn't owe us anything, but it's his 300th game, like just one press conference. It's pretty chill.
Yeah, the least you can do is just
it's not that intense.
And I've seen him answer questions, so I don't know. I'm not a big follower of this story, and I'm not a Richmond supporter, so I don't see it often, but it seems like I reckon they'll do something like when they had Buddy down, where they'll get like Trent Cotchin or Jack Rewald or someone to interview him.
Yeah, well, he's a fast. That's the thing about Dusty.
Well, that's a great suggestion. So you just said Trent Cotchin to interview.
But the AFL were angry that Buddy Franklin didn't do a press conference.
Well, yeah, okay. Well,
they tried to get him to do. It was the same situation, and Buddy didn't want to, and the AFL were pissed off about it. But
I can understand why the AFL is annoyed by that.
Both of them, and especially me too. Both of them, and especially Dusty, are quite fascinating characters. Like, I really want to know more about Dusty's life and his personality because he's so quiet.
I think he's like Buddy. I like Buddy as well, because I feel like he's done the full, wanting privacy and all that. And then after he's retired, he's sort of kept that up. Like, you still see him on ads and stuff, but like, he's not out there flogging himself,
Yeah.
And he seems, I don't know. But I think Buddy seems like a fucking good bloke.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he spoke in Darwin when they were there. He was up there for the recent games they've had up there.
Yeah.
And he was at a function speaking about, I think might have been Hawthorn. And, so he can speak, and he's capable of speaking publicly.
Another thing about Buddy that I've heard people say, that at the Swans or whatever, that he's like it would be a bit surprising, but he's like a massive footy head. So he like watches footy all the time, and
that is
like
surprising.
Would like come in and like know the draft and all this sort of stuff. Like, it made me like him more.
Yeah. That makes me like him more.
Well, this is the issue with Dusty, right? There's a new collective bargaining agreement, and players, they're enforced to do media, and the media has access. And if Dusty doesn't allow interviews, which he pretty much does, as soon as he sings a team song on a Saturday or a Sunday or Friday or Thursday, whenever they play, as soon as they're done with the song, he disappears. Media can't get him. Yeah. Even if they asked to have an interview with him, like, the chances of that happening are very, very low.
Well, I feel like he should just, for that situation, it should just be like a fine or something like that.
Well, that's
what they're
there is a fine. So
and
there's a fine of $10,000 or $20,000. And the club faces fines. Now, there hasn't really been fines issued, but
yeah,
if Dusty doesn't want to do media, that's fine. Like, I'm not gonna. If he doesn't want to do it, his 300th is next week if he plays it, if he's all good to go. If he doesn't want to do an interview, like he doesn't want to do an interview,
Look,
so why force him to do
but
it?
look,
Right? But let me finish here. He can speak. There's no doubt about it. He's done press conferences in the past, and those videos are still going viral of what he said in those prior press conferences because people want to hear him. So the fans deserve to hear him and what he has to say. I'd get someone like Trent Cotchin, who's already working with Channel 7. He knows him well. They get along. He understands Dustin Martin, unlike any other ordinary media person who wouldn't understand his personality. They don't know the ins and outs of Dustin Martin. And Dusty doesn't want to talk to people like that because he'll get questions, and that's probably the thing that doesn't make him want to do media. But if he's got someone like Trent Cotchin asking him questions, it's the same as Jordan Lewis. Jordan Lewis was asking Lance Franklin questions when he was doing a lap of honour around the MCG.
Yeah, I agree.
So Jordan Lewis and Buddy, they're friends.
It's a good
Trent Cotchin, that'd be the way to do it.
It's a good compromise. But what I'm asking is, if this was an elimination final coming up on Thursday night, Dusty would be playing. He's got like some kind of sickness that is conveniently so that they can have his 300th be at the MCG in front of the home crowd. Like, it's obviously because of that.
How's that obvious, Charlie?
Okay,
it's not obvious.
It's pure speculation. But people were talking like that would happen, and then it happened. So that's sort of why I think it.
It could, but yeah, we can't.
I don't know why they can't say, look, we're managing him. Like, they could just be transparent, and maybe that's proof. The fact that they didn't just manage him is proof that he actually is sick. What I'm saying is, if they are, I still think that if it was a do or die clash, should be playing, and the fact that they're wanting it to be in front of a blockbuster home crowd means that they want it to be an event. And if they want it to be an event, then the least that can happen is that we get some sort of something from Dusty. If that's a conversation with Trent Cotchin or a press conference, which maybe he hates. And I'd like to know how much of it is because he hates the media, because he would have, fairly good reason to with the chopstick incident, and some people just hate the media in general, which maybe he does, or maybe he's just shy. But I don't think it's that big of an ask for the game that's given him everything to give the fans some insight into his personality, because he's such a fascinating character and one of the greatest players of all time.
Well, look at this. The new 7 and Fox broadcast deal worth $4.5 billion. So if these broadcasters are paying that much money and they can't access one of the top 3 players in the game, well then that deal shouldn't be worth as much as $4.5 billion.
Exactly. And if it's on the CBA, obviously that's one of the major stakeholders, whatever you say, for that is the Players Association, which represents Dusty. So he's already in essence signed up to having to do that by being part of the Player Association and getting the benefits he gets from belonging to that.
And this is the big issue, is if they allow Dusty not to do any media, well then what sort of precedent does that set? We've got these clauses in the contract. It will be so messy if Dusty doesn't do an interview or something.
I reckon
it's in the agreement. They've signed this. This is a deal. This could cost the AFL a lot of money.
There should be fines.
Because 7 and Foxtel will be like, hey, we signed this contract. You guys aren't meeting the requirements and the clauses. Like, see you later. Like, we're
I don't know what's going on in Dusty's brain, but I reckon there should be fines. But there should be something. If it's something that like actually causes him severe anxiety or something, then I reckon he should be granted leave from doing interviews. But
absolutely
agree.
But I don't know. If he's not, then I think you should probably get
all I'll
fined.
say is I love Dusty and I love that he's shy, and I reckon it plays into his mystique, which is kind of what I want to know more. So it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he may be shy, but he was happy enough being filmed in his underwear running through the streets of Richmond or wherever that Bonds ad was filmed. And I don't know how much money he got for that, but he's not getting any money for a press conference, and I hope that's not the reason why he's not going to, put his shyness to one side.
Because I wonder if after his career he'll have to, like, I don't know what. It doesn't sound like he's going into coaching. I doubt he'd go into media.
That would be funny. Full circle.
So, how much money can you make from doing sportsman's nights? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, he's obviously sitting on
every single night of the
he'll
year.
have his money managed well and stuff. But he was, I don't know.
Oh, mate, I'm sure he's got something going. I think he's into property. He's got a few properties. With the money he's got, he can probably get a few.
He is a great character though. So
Yeah.
if he
is, and
chooses
look,
not to talk, then I still respect it, even though I think that he should, unless he's got anxiety.
I think he should, but if it's going to be that uncomfortable for him, as we've mentioned, well, he doesn't have to do it, and that's completely fine. If he's uncomfortable to do it and doesn't want to, which clearly is the case, well then don't do it.
But
Because why? But there's the other side of things where fans want to hear from him, so that's where I think you find the middle ground, and I reckon an interview with Trent Cotchin would just be perfect, and Dusty would be highly likely comfortable with that, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, if he's not comfortable with that, then he can grow up, to be honest.
All right, Charlie, Sam, now we're going to talk a little bit about a few other things on the agenda, and that is the holding the ball rule. What do we think about this? It's been one of the big talking points from the round, and yeah, it's not a rule change. They haven't made a rule change. They've changed the way it's sort of interpreted.
Yeah, I didn't catch all of the games. From what I saw, I still think that it's pretty rash of the AFL to introduce a rule change that's or an interpretation change as significant as this on the fly.
Like, well, they do this all the time, Charlie.
But like not one that's as noticeably affecting games as this one. I would argue.
It's called AFL umpire coaching. Every week they review every single game. They review every single decision, which I think is a little bit pedantic, but that's what they do. I was listening to an interview on Saturday morning, and they review every single decision and go through it all, which is just ridiculous. Anyway,
but every time I saw a free paid that seemed like it was as per the new interpretation, I felt that it made sense. Like when I saw that free, as I saw it happen, I thought they're going to be pinned for that under the new rules, and they were. So in terms of that, I don't think there was that much confusion. It's just a fair bit of a change, some of the calls that are being made. There was one on Sam Walsh. He had an arm free, but his legs were sort of caught in between tackles. He got pinned for that, and you could see him look like, you're kidding. But it made sense in terms of what the new interpretation was. There was one against, I think, Ben Ainsworth, or a Gold Coast player, late in the fourth quarter in the Essendon game. And the commentators seemed quite perplexed, but it seemed fairly clear-cut to me why that would be a free now. If there's an arm free, then you're gone.
So they're just giving them slightly less time, yeah?
But
well,
also,
what they're doing is they're saying that a player, once they get tackled, they can't try and get out of the tackle and try and break out of the tackle. It's sort of like a welfare change. It's all around sort of concussion, and that's sort of one of the things about all this.
So what, you can't... So if you try and shirk the tackle and you're unsuccessful...
Yeah.
Then it's going to be holding the ball. What about
They've just shortened the amount of time.
But do you still have prior?
You can't spend 3 seconds trying to break a tackle, and you actually break the tackle and kick it out. That's holding the ball now. You can try and do it in 1 second and try and get out of it quickly and handball it, but they're just shortening that amount of time, if you know what I'm saying.
So if once... Because obviously I was studying, so I didn't watch a lot of footy this weekend. But which probably isn't great when you're going on a podcast talking about footy, but fuck it. So there's been occasions, you're saying, when someone has shirked a tackle and actually gotten out of that tackle and handballed it, and then the umpire has gone and paid holding the ball, even though the ball...
I haven't seen that yet. But now the tell now, the same way that an umpire will see a player drag it in, and then that's kind of instantly alarm bells, and everyone knows that some sort of decision's about to be made, is if there's an arm free, if a player's got any kind of arm free and that sort of movement going on, and the other arm's trapped, then... as soon as that happens, it's a good chance that there'll be a free paid.
Well, I think the good thing about all this is that there's more holding the ball free kicks being paid, which rather than if they were the same amount as there were before the rule interpretation change got brought in, then there'd be more ball ups, and that's just that slows the game down. So the more holding the ball free kicks that are paid, the more open the game is, the more quicker, the more potentially high scoring it is, and the more entertaining it is, rather than a ball up. So that's like a positive potentially, but you don't want to get to the stage where this holding the ball's happening all the time. So I don't know. I think we've got to give it another week or two, see what it's like.
Yeah, agreed. It could be a good change.
It could be, and
Nathan Buckley was singing its praises on Thursday night, saying that it was leading to a fast flowing game of footy because players had to get rid of the ball quicker, which was probably true. Yeah.
But then we saw other instances where it's like that was not holding the ball and the umpires paid it.
This is just further proof, not to bring it back again, but an old debate me and Connor Kennedy had about captain's challenges. The game is so hard to adjudicate on the ground with the umpires and so hard to adjudicate with the officials who make the decisions for what the umpires' interpretation should be, that the idea of having a captain's challenge in the fourth quarter of a game is just completely unrealistic.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Anyway, we'll wait and see another week of holding the ball and see what it's all like. Now, what about Melbourne, boys? What the hell did they just produce in Alice Springs? That was an absolute debacle. They got beaten by more than, I think it was 92 points to Freo. And when you lose by 92 points, can you win a premiership in that same season?
Yeah, I mean, they could have had an off day. They're flying up to Alice Springs. It's quite possible.
See, but like these are the sorts of games where it's like, when you lose by 92 points, there could be shit going on, or it could be all normal. But usually, when you lose by 92 points and you get absolutely walloped, there could be something happening in Melbourne.
I don't know.
At Melbourne.
I guess we'll find out in the next few weeks, but it could just be a total aberration.
Yeah, sometimes I think teams just don't show up.
Strange. Maybe there's a bit of, I don't know, a bit of energies up there. Strange things happen in the Alice.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah. That could be the case.
But do you remember in 2008,
Yeah.
Geelong lost one game for the entire year, except for the grand final, in about round 8 or 9, and they lost to Collingwood by 90 points. They won every single game that year except the grand final, and the one game they lost was to Collingwood by 90 points. And
there you go.
I would say that the fact that it was in a sort of unfamiliar ground probably adds to it, and they probably weren't expecting it from Freo, who aren't a very high scoring team. So,
but it's true that if that occurred in Melbourne at the MCG, Marvel, imagine it would be all anyone's talking about.
Yeah, huge up
on all the footy shows. But because it's in Alice Springs off Broadway and at the hands of Fremantle, who are kind of innocent side, it's just sort of going to be swept under the rug. And maybe it is an aberration, because sometimes I think it happens less and less these days maybe, but sometimes teams just, they don't have it.
Well, West Coast
they just don't have it on the day.
Points to Adelaide, that was, they were playing well, West Coast.
Yeah, but they lose by 90 points every fortnight.
This one hasn't been swept under the carpet. They're under the most spotlight out of anyone this week, Melbourne.
But what were
apart
they?
From perhaps the umpires.
They were fourth. They lost to... Who else did they lose to?
Well, they're
recently?
10th now, Sam.
Yeah, but
they're
they were third. If they won, they would have been third.
I'm pretty confident they'll make finals.
Who'd they lose to again? They had another bad loss. Was it Hawthorn? No.
They lost to Carlton.
No, they lost to... they lost to West Coast.
They lost to West Coast.
But apart from that, they've been pretty good.
Lost to West Coast over there by 35 points. Then they beat St Kilda by 38. And then they just got pumped by Freo. And now Melbourne take on Collingwood.
Well, it's so interesting because of how...
It could be shambles.
The evenness of the competition is so interesting now, because you can assess past games in the fixture, and then games that you previously thought indicated that a side was good, suddenly it indicates that they're average or that they're not that good at all. Like, for example, Carlton lost to Geelong and then lost to Collingwood, and that significantly brought them down in a lot of people's estimation. Melbourne then defeated Geelong, which brought Melbourne up in people's estimation. Now Geelong don't seem that good. And Melbourne suddenly might not have been that good all the whole time.
Which means Carlton aren't they?
Yeah, but then Carlton are beating Port, but then maybe Port aren't that good. So it's just a constant cycle.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure we know two things. There are only two teams in this competition that look like they're doing well right now and playing with any consistency. And that is Sydney and that is Essendon.
Well, we'll see this week. However, I will say in terms
What
of...
do you mean? Sydney lost to 17th place for Richmond.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
that was weeks ago.
Carlton...
I tipped Richmond.
Carlton are 5...
I've not stopped claiming that victory of my tip.
Carlton are 5 wins and 2 losses against top 8 sides.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much almost the best in the entire top 8, aside from Sydney.
Is that top 8 at the time or top 8 currently?
Well, there you go. That's a good question.
I think currently.
Yeah, no one knows.
Because it's changing every week.
That's a good question. Sam.
Currently.
I think it's top 8 currently. It would be the way to go there. But boys, let's talk about the fairness element. So it's best and fairest for Brownlow and for the Rising Star Award. Now, Harley Reid, sling tackle, he's out for 2 weeks. They've appealed the decision. They're going to try and reduce it to 1. And he's ineligible now for the Rising Star Award. So is Sam Darcy. But Harley Reid, he was the front runner. Because of this sling tackle now, he won't be able to get the Rising Star Award. Is that right, or is that completely crap?
In all aspects of the game, I'm usually a traditionalist, but I think this rule was ridiculous. And I also think it translates to the Brownlow. That first we'll talk about Rising Star. It's stupid. They're getting suspended for acts that aren't particularly violent or intentional.
And unfair.
And
Like,
unfair,
or
yeah.
acts that deem you to be an
they're
unfair
not
player and make
dog
you
acts,
ineligible for big awards.
And you get, like, if a few people get suspended, you got, like, 2 guys to choose from, and then, it'll be one guy that's just, like, played every game and averaging, like, 15 disposals. You want the best players winning those awards. And I think it translates to the Brownlow now, is that I don't mind the Brownlow best and fairest, like, taking it into account, but I think if you can get tackled, if you can get suspended a week for tackle bringing someone to the ground where they hit their head,
Player doesn't even get concussed.
that player doesn't get concussed, and in that you could do the exact same tackle and their head could not hit the ground, and it has absolutely nothing to do with it, and it could be to do with luck. To be rubbed out of a Brownlow would be a disgrace, and it's going to happen. Like, it's happened in the past. It's just been a quirk of the last 20 years that it hasn't happened. It will happen soon.
Yeah.
Because people are getting suspended for more and more actions. Someone is going to lose a Brownlow. And
Trent Cotchin
Brownlow's a big deal. Like, for the rest of your life, you're known as a Brownlow medalist. Like, I was actually listening to the radio before, and I was thinking about Corey McKernan, who's not like considered like a Hall of Fame star, but if he'd had a Brownlow, it probably changed his life for the next 60 years after it. He's always known as a Brownlow medalist. He's, it would just be, in Melbourne terms, where the city that's so obsessed with football, it's sort of like
It's the key to the city.
It's almost like a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
It's a key to the city.
The other side of the ledger is Trent Cotchin, who I believe he's won a Brownlow, but because he won it, and I think it was maybe Joe Watson who was ineligible. It was that year.
Yeah.
Trent Cotchin doesn't even he spoke about it on Talking Footy on Channel 7. He doesn't even like being recognised. He doesn't really like talking about it, and he said something along those lines.
I gotta
because
say,
of Joe Watson,
yeah.
and he was the winner, but he wasn't officially. He wasn't the winner.
I got to say one thing about this. I can't let this topic slide without saying one thing. Trent Cotchin is a great bloke.
Okay.
Because
And I know what you're going to say after this. Yeah.
when that happened, he was very reluctant to accept it. He rang Joe Watson. He had a conversation with him, and then eventually decided to accept it. I read about it in his book. On the other hand, Sam Mitchell did not accept anything. And I think in Trent Cotchin's book, he talks about how they had a very different attitude to it, and Sam Mitchell was sort of relishing in it.
Of course Sam Mitchell was. He
and-
was doing the injection gesture at Essendon players.
Yeah.
It's
So
awful for Joe Watson.
I'm not a
that
big.
he
I'm
would
not. I'm not Sam Mitchell's biggest fan. I got to say.
I genuinely don't think of either of them as Brownlow medalists, and that's not even because any bias against either of them, but I don't know if I immediately think Job is either, but yeah,
Neither of them.
the whole year is just kind of like
Well,
muted.
why was Job ruled out? Why couldn't he get it? Because of the drug saga.
Yeah, because we could do a
Deep
100
dive.
episode podcast deep dive into that.
True crime.
True crime, yeah.
In terms of the Brownlow, I think that I agree. It's kind of because the structures that we have in place for banishing players and everything, they're such flimsy fixtures that you can't start letting people lose the Brownlow because they've been suspended for an interpretation change that happened in the head office a couple of weeks earlier. And another argument is that it's just taking the entire fairest element out of it, because imagine if Gaff won the Brownlow that year.
No, you can keep the fairest and you could take it so it's like an intentional dog act.
So you draw the line, right? So Mark Rashudo made a good
separate
point.
panel that judges if it's an intentional dog act.
No, well, you can say it's 2 games or less suspension, you're still eligible. That's what Mark Rashudo said on Triple M.
It could fit into the matrix that they have.
Yeah, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind getting rid of the fairest element.
So
you
Mark
keep the
Rashudo
fairest.
made a good point and made a good point about Harley Reid. He's a once in 50 years rising star, and he won't be able to get the award.
Yeah,
And
but it's the rising star. Like he's destined for greater
doesn't
things.
matter. He's a star player that's come into the game and taken football by storm. And he's not going to be the rising star this year because of a sling tackle
Who cares?
that has ruled him out for 2 weeks.
Chris Scott was the rising star in 1994. I didn't hear that until when I read an article last night.
But the narrative...
Patrick Cripps was a rising
Charlie,
star.
it's
No
part of
one
the
talks
narrative.
about that.
It's the same argument as the Brownlow
was he?
medalist.
Patrick Cripps
Charlie,
didn't. Sorry,
when
Jesse
we
Hogan
look-
won, yeah.
When we look back in 20 years and start thinking about players that came onto the AFL scene and dominated, we're going to be thinking about Harley Reid. Now, like, if you can just say that, he was a rising star, it just makes it all flow a bit better. And he deserves that accolade, and he's not going to get it. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but, he deserves it. Anyway, if they get suspended for 2 games or less, they should still be eligible in my view, and I agree with Mark Rashudo. They should be eligible for the Brownlow medal and for the Rising Star.
Yeah,
I'd have it at 2 games.
Sounds like a good compromise.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We agree and we move on. Lovely. That's going to wrap up the show, boys. We'll just go through a few results just before we wrap it all up. Richmond almost got that win over Geelong, which was, we previewed that game. We spoke about it. We thought it'd be the worst game of the round. And Saturday night, I was tuning into this one, and I had my heart in my mouth for a fair few moments throughout that night because I thought Richmond were going to win. They were leading for most of it. Geelong came over the top in the last quarter and ended up winning. That was a good game. Did you boys catch any other games that caught your attention?
On the weekend,
Yeah,
Carlton Port Adelaide caught my attention.
that was a good win.
Especially, I had your comments ringing in my ears.
Well, my comments were...
Every goal that we parred on in the last quarter, I was just thinking about you. the whole
Well,
time.
what did I say? That was wrong.
You said we were a quote fucking dreadful outfit.
No, that was a joke.
I reckon they were playing.
was a
I
joke.
reckon they had that on the loudspeaker in the change rooms at 3/4 time.
I was thinking that. Do you think clubs ever do that? Like, all right,
I've heard that.
this fan said this, let's prove him wrong. Like for example, us talking about, I think it was, who was it? It was Geelong, or no, we said that. Oh yeah, we said Richmond will get pumped by 60 plus points. Remember that last week?
Yeah, I was thinking about
See,
that. I was
And
watching
Richmond
the
would have
game.
played that pre-game. That they did do this. They were playing this on the big screen pre-game at GMHBA, saying, "Look at this guy, Sam Gill, saying that they're going to lose by 60 plus." I was involved as well.
We were
I put
all
my hand
involved,
up.
and I was watching that game, wondering what was going to happen, and then it looked like Richmond were going to win, which would have been.
Well, I
amusing.
just said that. Yeah,
I've heard.
they ended up losing by 30 points.
Yeah.
Richmond.
I've heard that somewhere. I can't remember that. It might have even been in cricket or something that the coach like put up a bunch of newspaper clippings saying
Yeah.
negative stories.
Well, yeah,
But
it happened to you.
I think
mate.
we'd probably be down the hierarchy of of
Yeah.
AFL media market moving.
We could
you're
pivot.
right.
We could pivot into AFLW criticism, and then maybe we could get some, clippings up on their walls because media talks less about them, and there's definitely less criticism.
Well, what could we say? Maybe in the preview show when we record that one later in the week, we can say something that really just
needs
a few people.
AFLW needs a Kane Corns,
Hey,
a Jane Corns.
it doesn't matter. I tell you what, it doesn't matter who it comes from. Sometimes it's the words you use, and you can really get under the skin of some people. So
Kane
Yeah,
Corns,
okay, that's
Kane Corns is the AFLW.
Yeah, he probably
Kane
is.
Corns.
He probably
I
is.
think I've heard him say stuff that's sort of like, he's been the first one to sort of been like, this is not good enough. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, they
Yeah.
should be criticised because it adds to the professionalism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a fine line, but it's probably partly true.
Well, Hawthorn beat Adelaide. I covered this game, and Adelaide did not rock up in that first half. They kicked first half and a bit. Hawthorn kicked 10 of the first 12 goals, and in a game that Adelaide needed to win to really keep their finals hopes alive, they were